Germany just pivoted. What comes next?
Germany cuts ties, shockwave across diplomacy.
Berlin breaks from Israel. History shattered.
Germany turns away. Stunning shift. Global fallout.
Something seismic just fractured in Berlin's halls of power. Germany turned its back on Israel overnight. But what if it isn't simply a foreign policy shift? What if it's a deeper rupture, a long-buried breakdown that finally surfaced under global pressure? In the next minutes, we're peeling back layers no one else will show you. The real story isn't what happened, it's why it had to happen now. For decades, Germany's relationship with Israel has been described with one word: special. From the ashes of the Holocaust, Berlin tied its foreign policy to Israel's security, calling it a reason of state. That phrase wasn't symbolic. It meant Germany would stand by Israel in almost any circumstance. Military aid, diplomatic cover, and trade agreements all flowed under this understanding. So why, after 75 years, has Germany now broken ranks? The answer begins with pressure, both internal and external. First, look inside Germany. Public opinion has shifted sharply in recent years. Younger Germans, many with immigrant backgrounds from the Middle East and North Africa, no longer feel bound by historic guilt towards Israel. Polling shows rising skepticism, citizens asking why Germany should automatically defend Israel's military actions when humanitarian concerns are mounting. In 2023 and 2024, pro-Palestinian demonstrations grew across Berlin, Hamburg, and Frankfurt, often dwarfing the pro-Israel rallies. That shift filtered upward into politics. But politics alone doesn't explain this rupture. Germany's economy has been battered, first by the energy crisis after Russia's war on Ukraine, then by inflation, then by supply chain shocks. Berlin desperately needs stable relations with Arab and Muslim states, countries sitting on critical energy resources, trade routes, and investment opportunities. Supporting Israel unconditionally suddenly came at a heavy cost. Lost credibility in the Arab world. Now, turn outward. Across Europe, Israel's conduct in Gaza and the West Bank has drawn sharp criticism. Spain, Ireland, Belgium all raised their voices. The European Parliament debated sanctions. For years, Germany blocked such measures, acting as Israel's shield inside the EU. But the shield grew heavier. German diplomats warned Berlin could not keep absorbing the reputational blowback. Then came the tipping point. In early 2025, a United Nations vote condemned Israel's latest military operation. Normally, Germany would abstain or stand with the US and Israel. This time, it voted yes. That single move signaled the break. Overnight, Berlin aligned with the majority of the world, leaving Washington and Jerusalem isolated. Why now? Why this moment? Behind closed doors, German officials pointed to three converging triggers. First, mounting civilian casualties broadcast daily on global media. Graphic images carried moral weight, especially in a country that insists never again applies universally. Second, domestic pressure from coalition politics. Chancellor Olaf Scholz, already weakened by economic stagnation and energy troubles, faced intense pressure from Green Party and Social Democratic lawmakers who framed Israel's conduct as a humanitarian crisis. Third, geopolitical calculations. Germany could no longer ignore the Arab Gulf states. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE, all key suppliers of energy, made clear Berlin's blind support for Israel would cost Germany real deals. Together, these forces pushed Berlin over the edge. But to understand the depth of this rupture, we need to rewind. Since 1949, Germany's leaders have spoken of an unbreakable bond with Israel. Chancellor Konrad Adenauer signed reparations agreements in the 1950s, billions in aid to Israel's young state. Helmut Schmidt called it a moral duty. Angela Merkel went further, declaring Israel's security part of Germany's national identity. For decades, this was untouchable. The German public accepted this, even when uneasy. Why? Because the Holocaust defined modern German identity. Supporting Israel was a way to prove Germany's transformation from perpetrator to protector. But history has limits when confronted with present crises. For younger generations, the Holocaust feels distant, an event of textbooks, not of lived memory. And when today's images show destroyed homes in Gaza, the guilt narrative loses power. In fact, some young activists flip the script. accusing Germany of betraying its never again principle by excusing Israel's actions. That generational divide cracked the foundation of consensus. So Berlin faced a dilemma: uphold the historic bond or adapt to a shifting world. For months, Germany tried to balance. Scholz spoke of Israel's right to defend itself, yet also warned of humanitarian limits. German arms exports continued, but with delays. Diplomatic language softened, but commitments remained. Then came the breaking point, when Germany's foreign minister stood at the UN podium and declared, "International law applies to all nations, without exception." That sentence shattered 70 years of coded language. It was Berlin's way of saying Israel is no longer above critique. This wasn't just semantics. It was a pivot with teeth. Within days, Germany suspended certain arms deliveries. Trade talks cooled, and in Brussels, Germany stepped aside, no longer blocking EU measures aimed at Israel. The message to Jerusalem was unmistakable. The shield is gone. And with that, a chain reaction began. Think of alliances as dominoes. Germany is Europe's largest economy, Israel's second biggest partner in the EU, and America's closest ally on the continent. When Berlin shifts, others follow. If Germany turns its back, Spain and Ireland feel vindicated. France grows bolder. Brussels hardens its line, and Washington suddenly looks isolated, forced to defend Israel largely alone. For Israel, this is an existential diplomatic threat. Losing Germany doesn't mean losing a partner. It means losing legitimacy in Europe. But here's the twist. Berlin insists it hasn't abandoned Israel entirely. Officials still speak of commitment and dialogue. They frame it not as betrayal, but as a recalibration, an attempt to balance historic responsibility with present humanitarian law. But in politics, perception is reality, and the perception in Tel Aviv is clear.
In Jerusalem, reaction was fury. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu accused Berlin of historical amnesia. Israeli officials warned Germany of irreversible damage to the partnership. Defense cooperation, long the backbone of the alliance, now hangs in the balance. The psychological blow is even deeper. For decades, Israel believed Germany's support was eternal, immune to political wins. That myth is shattered, and once myths break, they rarely return. So here we are, a bond born in tragedy, tested for decades, now cracked under pressure. Germany has turned. Israel feels abandoned. The world watches. But the question is larger than a single vote or speech. It's about whether the post-World War II order, built on guilt, morality, and historic responsibility, can survive in today's ruthless geopolitics. Because if Germany can walk away, who might be next? The rupture did not stay confined to Berlin and Jerusalem. Within hours, ripple effects spread across Brussels, Washington, Riyadh, and beyond. Because when Germany moves, others take notice. And this time, Germany didn't just shift, it broke precedent. Across Europe, the reaction was swift. Spain and Ireland, long critical of Israel's actions, openly praised Germany's vote. France, usually cautious, hinted that the EU could no longer treat Israel with kid gloves. Even nations that once hesitated, like Italy and the Netherlands, saw Germany's pivot as cover to reassess their own policies. For the first time, Europe's biggest power aligned with the critics, not the defenders. And that opened a door no one can easily close. In Washington, the shock was immediate. The United States and Germany have always presented a united front on Israel, even when privately disagreeing. But now, America looks increasingly alone, shielding Israel diplomatically while its closest European ally steps back. That isolation matters. Every UN vote, every trade negotiation, every arms deal, suddenly the US finds fewer partners willing to follow its lead. And Israel knows it.
Inside the White House, advisors scrambled. Should the US double down, standing by Israel no matter what? Or should it pressure Netanyahu's government more forcefully, now that Germany has set a precedent? Neither path looks easy. If Washington softens, it risks angering pro-Israel constituencies at home. If it hardens, it risks total isolation on the world stage. Either way, Germany just forced America's hand. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, Arab capitals celebrated. For years, they accused Europe of hypocrisy, preaching human rights while shielding Israel from accountability. Germany's pivot changed that narrative overnight. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Egypt seized the moment, presenting themselves as partners Berlin could trust. Energy deals, arms sales, infrastructure investments, all dangled on the table. Germany's move wasn't just moral, it was transactional, and the Arab world understood the signal perfectly. But here's where the story gets sharper. Israel is not just a nation, it is a test case for the post-war order. If Germany, the country that swore eternal solidarity, can pull away, then what about other relationships built on guilt, on memory, on morality? Does Poland still feel bound to Germany's leadership inside the EU? Does Japan still anchor itself unshakably to America's post-war umbrella? Cracks in one moral alliance invite questions about all the others. Inside Germany, the domestic fallout is equally dramatic. Conservative voices accuse Scholz of betrayal, warning that Germany has abandoned its historic responsibility. Right-wing parties are already weaponizing the decision, arguing that Berlin caved to street protests and immigrant pressure. On the left, activists celebrate what they see as a moral stand, finally applying never again universally, not selectively. Germany is split down the middle, and that split could define its politics for years. For Israel, the crisis is existential, not militarily. The IDF still receives US support, but psychologically, diplomatically, strategically. Israel long believed Germany was its anchor in Europe. Losing that anchor doesn't just mean one less ally. It means the narrative has changed. For decades, Israel could say, "Germany stands with us, no matter what." That shield disarmed critics. But now that line no longer works. And without it, Israel faces a harsher European arena.
Consider the scenarios. 1. Germany's break triggers an EU-wide shift. Sanctions, trade restrictions, recognition of Palestinian statehood. 2. The US pressures Israel privately, warning that even Washington's patience has limits. 3. Netanyahu doubles down, framing Germany's move as betrayal, rallying his base with defiance. Each scenario carries risk. Each escalates tensions, and none return to the old status quo. Here's the deeper point. This is not just about Gaza or Netanyahu or one UN vote. It is about the crumbling of a 70-year-old logic that guilt and memory could guarantee eternal alliances. Germany has proven that even sacred bonds can bend under pressure, and once one bends, others may follow. So, what happens next? In Brussels, expect louder calls for an EU arms embargo. In Washington, expect heated debate about whether US interests are truly served by unconditional support for Israel. In Tel Aviv, expect desperation, Israel seeking new allies, new partners, new ways to replace the shield it has lost. But allies are not built overnight. Trust takes decades, and once broken, it rarely repairs. The global order now feels more unstable. Think of it. Russia's war fractured Europe's unity on energy. China's rise fractured global trade consensus. And now Germany's pivot fractures the post-war moral consensus on Israel. 3 fractures in 3 arenas. How many more before the structure itself collapses? As you listen, remember this. Germany did not act lightly. For decades, every chancellor feared this exact moment, being accused of abandoning Israel. And yet, Berlin crossed the line. That tells us something crucial. It tells us the cost of staying silent grew greater than the cost of breaking tradition. In politics, that balance decides everything. Now, the burden shifts. To Israel, to adapt. To the US, to decide whether it stands alone. To Europe, to define whether it acts as a bloc or splinters further. And to Germany itself, to live with the consequences of a decision it cannot reverse. This is more than a diplomatic story. It is a human story about memory, guilt, identity, survival. Germany built its modern self-image on a promise, never again.
For 70 years, that meant unwavering support for Israel. But tonight, never again has been redefined. And the question now haunting every capital is simple, chilling, unforgettable. If Germany can walk away, who is truly safe in the world of alliances anymore? The fracture is here, the shield is gone, and the aftershocks have only just begun.